After being abandoned to herself in a moment of desperation, a young mother clung to the only hope she had left, her faithful dog. This is a story of courage, unconditional love, and a miracle that will touch your heart. What this extraordinary animal managed to accomplish will leave you speechless. Stay with us until the end of the video to discover the entire story. If it moves you, leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe and activate the notification bell. Let's begin. Lara was a young single mother, without family or help, who desperately tried to take care of her baby. When all hope seemed lost, it was her dog, Lupo, who accomplished the impossible, saving a life. What happened next changed their destiny forever. It was a peaceful night at the small suburban hospital. The dim lights of the corridors cast flickering shadows on the walls, and the silence was interrupted only by the slight murmur of nurses checking patients remaining under observation. Everything seemed to flow as usual until the sliding doors of the entrance slowly opened, without anyone seeming to operate them. In the dim light appeared an unexpected figure. It wasn't a person, but a large dog, dirty with earth and with ruffled fur. It proceeded with difficulty, as if it had traveled a long distance. Its eyes, deep and dark, conveyed a desperate intensity that made the blood of Marta, one of the younger nurses, run cold. The dog, with slow and calculated movements, approached the center of the room. Between its jaws, held with incredible delicacy, was a small bundle wrapped in a worn blanket. "Oh my God! What's happening?" Marta murmured, approaching cautiously. When the dog laid the bundle on the ground and withdrew a few steps, the young woman bent down trembling. Carefully moving aside the blanket, her breath caught in her throat. It was a newborn. The baby was very pale, almost motionless, and his breathing barely perceptible. Without wasting time, Marta picked him up and called for help. Within seconds, the entire emergency room sprang into action. While the doctor on duty, Dr. Ricci, ordered the preparation of amphor and thermal heating, Marta glanced toward the entrance. The dog was still there, motionless, watching the scene with a vigilant gaze, as if waiting for confirmation that the baby was in good hands. The newborn was immediately connected to the machines. Severe dehydration, hypothermia, the doctor noted, focused while giving rapid instructions to the staff. The baby's skin was cold and dirty, his arms thin as twigs. The monitor emitted a faint beep, marking a weak heartbeat. There was no time to lose. A team of nurses moved in unison to stabilize him, administering fluids and oxygen. It was only when the baby began to show the first weak signs of improvement that someone remembered the dog. Julia, one of the veteran nurses, slowly approached the door. Through the glass, she saw the animal still standing, exhausted, but with the same determined look. "This isn't just any stray," she murmured to herself, struck by the strange awareness that seemed to shine through the dog's eyes. Questions crowded their minds. Where did that baby come from? How had the dog managed to find him, and above all, to bring him exactly to the hospital? It was a mystery, but one thing was clear. That animal had saved a life. "He's improving, but it's too early to celebrate," said Dr. Ricci, adjusting the intravenous infusion. The baby, though very weak, was slowly responding to treatment. Outside, under the flickering lights of the entrance, the dog lay down, exhausted. It had completed its mission, but seemed determined not to leave until it was certain the baby was safe. Inside the emergency room, time seemed suspended. Every heartbeat of the newborn was an achievement, every breath a small victory. The nurses worked with extreme attention, aware of how fragile that thread of life was. And meanwhile, the mysterious dog, anonymous hero of the night, remained there, silent witness to a miracle no one would ever forget. Where had that newborn come from? Who could have entrusted him to a dog? The questions multiplied, but at that moment the only priority was to save him. The medical staff worked tirelessly, while the dog remained seated at the entrance, motionless like a sentinel. Its eyes followed every movement inside the hospital, full of a strange awareness. When the baby's situation stabilized, while remaining critical, the unease among the nurses grew. The supervisor, Clara, was the first to break the silence. "We need to notify the police," she said, clutching the medical chart in her hands. An abandoned baby, a dog as savior. It was clear they needed answers. Anna, still shaken, hurried to dial the number. Explaining what had happened to the officers on the other end of the line was surreal, but the promise of rapid intervention brought a minimum of relief. While they waited, Laura, a middle-aged nurse, gathered her courage and approached the dog. She crouched slowly, speaking in a low voice so as not to frighten it. The animal, large and worn, showed no signs of aggression. Its eyes, tired and intense, told a story no one could understand. "How did you know where to bring him?" Laura whispered, placing a hand on its muddy back. The dog remained still, continuing to stare at the door that separated it from the baby. Shortly after, the sound of sirens announced the arrival of the police. 3 officers entered, led by a sergeant with a weathered face and a distrustful air. "What the hell is going on?" he asked, looking around. "A dog brought a newborn to the hospital," Clara explained, not beating around the bush. "We don't know anything else." The officer observed the dog with evident astonishment. "Does it have a microchip?" he asked. One of the younger officers approached with the reader, but the dog, suspicious, took a step back. "It won't be easy to approach it," said the young officer. "But we can't leave it here. Maybe it knows where to find whoever left the baby." The sergeant nodded. With slow movements, he extended an improvised rope toward the animal, speaking with a calm voice. After a moment of hesitation, the dog accepted the leash, allowing itself to be guided without resistance. "Take us there," the sergeant murmured, and with a slight tug, the dog set off. The small patrol went out into the night, following the animal through the semi-deserted streets of the city. The yellowish lights of the street lamps illuminated the empty sidewalks, while the squad cars proceeded slowly behind them. The dog led without hesitation, as if it knew the way perfectly. Street after street, modern buildings gave way to older and more neglected houses. The landscape changed, becoming increasingly melancholy. Finally, it stopped in front of a decrepit house on the outskirts of the city. The door was ajar, swinging slightly in the wind, and the broken windows showed a dark and empty interior. "This is the place," said the sergeant, advancing cautiously. The officers exchanged a look charged with tension. With flashlights on, they approached the dilapidated building, ready to discover what lay beyond that threshold. The dog, tired but vigilant, sat in front of the entrance, as if handing over their destiny into the hands of men. Inside that house awaited them the second half of the mystery. "Come on, let's go in," ordered Lieutenant Morelli, his voice low but decisive. The officers drew their flashlights and pushed the shabby door, which opened with a sinister moan. Inside, the air was thick, impregnated with mold and abandonment, mixed with an unpleasant smell of rotten food. The house seemed frozen in time. The furniture, covered with layers of dust, was scattered disorderly, as if someone had left everything in a panic. With each step, the wooden floor creaked under their boots. The German shepherd, now at their side, led them toward a small door at the back. Morelli motioned for his men to follow. Opening the door wide, they discovered a bare little room. In a corner, a dirty crib, wrapped in a worn blanket. Nearby, a chipped bowl and some blankets piled on the floor. "They kept the baby here," noted Officer Ferry, examining the dust around. The scene conveyed a deep sense of abandonment. The dog approached the crib, sniffing the fabric as if it still recognized the baby's smell. "It doesn't seem like the baby was here for long," Ferry observed. The dusty edges and stale air indicated the place had been left to itself for some time. The dog, as if seized by sudden weariness, collapsed next to the crib. It had watched over, it had protected, it had brought the baby to safety. Now that its task was finished, it finally seemed to let go. "He did more than anyone else," one of the officers murmured, passing a gentle hand over the animal's head. The dog closed its eyes for a moment, as if it understood. Meanwhile, the officers searched the rest of the house. In the kitchen, among dirty dishes and remains of moldy food, they found a crumpled envelope on a wobbly table. Inside, a brief handwritten letter. "I have no more strength. I can no longer take care of him. I only have Lupo. I know he'll do the right thing. Forgive me." The letter had no signature, but the reference to Lupo was clear. Lupo was the dog, the silent guardian of that baby. Silence fell over the house. The officers looked at each other, each struggling to understand the enormity of what they had just discovered. In the absence of any other human being, it had been a dog that took the responsibility of protecting a fragile life. "And now?" the youngest officer asked quietly. "Who was the mother? And where is she now?" No other sign of human presence. Only emptiness. The police intensified investigations in the surrounding area. The neighborhood inhabitants, few and reluctant, knew little. Many had never seen anyone in the house for months. But an elderly man, sitting on the porch of an old house, finally provided a missing piece. There was a young girl who lived there, he recounted, adjusting his cap. She had a small baby and a big dog. She hardly ever went out. After the baby's father left them, she seemed broken. Then she disappeared. The old man's words clarified the picture. The girl, abandoned and without any support, had resisted until desperation overwhelmed her. The breakthrough came a few hours later. A phone call informed the officers that a young woman, in a confused state, had been found in a park several kilometers away. She was dehydrated, tired, and seemed to have wandered aimlessly for days. Upon arrival at the hospital, Morelli immediately recognized the connection. On the emergency room bed, the young woman, with worn clothes and face hollowed by hunger and fear, slowly raised her gaze when she saw the officers enter. And in those eyes full of desperation, finally, answers began to appear. "How is my baby?" Lara asked with a thread of voice, her eyes red and dull from fatigue. The officers exchanged a look charged with emotion before the oldest bent toward her. "He's fine," he said gently. "Thanks to Lupo, he's in the hospital and improving." Hearing those words, Lara burst into tears. She covered her face with her hands, trembling with relief and guilt. "I left him," she sobbed. "I had no more strength. I was alone. His father abandoned us. I didn't know what to do anymore. Only Lupo stayed by our side." The officers listened in silence, deeply touched by the desperation that emerged from her story. Rex, the faithful dog, wasn't just an animal. He had been her last bulwark against the abyss. "I asked him to take him away," Lara continued with a broken voice. "I knew he would understand. I knew he would find a way to save him." The room filled with a silence charged with respect. No one could find better words. That mother's courage and that dog's loyalty spoke for themselves. "Lupo made it," an officer finally said, with a touch of emotion in his voice. "He saved your son." It was then that Lara, supported by the nurses, was accompanied to the room where the baby was resting. Lupo, who had never stopped waiting near the door, rose wearily and followed her, his tail moving slowly. When Lara saw her baby lying in the crib, fragile but alive, she couldn't hold back her tears. She approached, gently caressed the baby's little head, then turned to Lupo, who watched her silently from the threshold. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving his life." In the following days, Lara slowly recovered her strength. Her baby, carefully monitored by the medical staff, showed evident improvement. His skin regained color, his heartbeat was stronger, his curious eyes began to open to the world. Lupo always remained close, watching day and night, never too distant nor too intrusive, as if he knew his presence was still necessary. Finally, after weeks of care and rehabilitation, the day of discharge arrived. Lara, still worn but visibly stronger, left the hospital with her baby in her arms. The warm sun caressed the baby's face, while Lupo walked proudly by their side. "We won't be alone anymore," Lara whispered, holding the baby against her. Social workers had arranged temporary accommodation for her, ongoing care and a support pathway to help her get back on her feet. When she anxiously asked if she could keep Lupo with her, one of the assistants smiled. "Of course," she said. "Lupo is part of your family. We won't separate you." Those words were for Lara the signal that, despite future difficulties, the worst was behind them. In the following days, the entire city mobilized. The story of the brave dog who had saved a newborn moved everyone. Donations arrived. Food, clothes, toys, and even job offers for Lara. Little by little, in their new home, the young mother began to build a different life. Lupo was always by her side, a silent but indispensable presence. At night, he curled up near the crib, watching over the baby he had saved. During the day, he ran beside the stroller like a tireless guardian. The fear, which for so long had wrapped Lara like a cold blanket, began to melt under the warmth of hope and gratitude. She still had so much to face, but now she knew she wasn't alone. And every time she looked down and met Lupo's faithful eyes, she remembered that even in the darkest moments, a miracle can be born.